What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I want to take a look at a fight that took place December 20th, 1946, New York's Madison Square Garden, between Ray Robinson and a young man from Ohio named Tommy Bell. Now, Ray Robinson would win the 1939 Featherweight Championship Golden Gloves against gym mate, well-respected Louis Spider Valentine. 1940, Lightweight Championship Golden Gloves against Andy Ninell. And he would turn professional October 4th, 1940, against Joe Escovedo, who was on the undercard of his hero, Henry Armstrong, when he was attempting to defend his welterweight championship belt against Fritzy Zivit. Now, Ray Robinson would be successful. Henry Armstrong would not. He would lose his welterweight championship crown. But on a rematch in 1941, Fritzy Zivit would knock out Henry Armstrong. Late in the match, Ray Robinson was in the second row, and he decided to get revenge on Fritzy Zivit. But meanwhile, he wanted a title of his own. That same year, 1941, he would have a shot at Sammy Aingat's lightweight championship crown. Unfortunately, Sammy Aingat would not make weight. It would be on the night of July 1941, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And Aingat wouldn't make weight, so it would be a non-title fight. Ray Robinson would defeat Sammy Aingat, but it wouldn't be for the lightweight championship belt. He would face Sammy Aingat again, July 31st, 1942. This time it was in New York's Madison Square Garden. Ray Robinson would etch him out in a 10-round decision. Now, Robinson had an opportunity at the welterweight championship belt with Marty Servo. Now, he faced him September 25th, 1941. He would defeat him in 10 rounds. Face him again, May 28th, 1942, New York's Madison Square Garden. And he would defeat him in 10 rounds. So the issue Ray Robinson would begin to have is a lot of the opponents would not want to face Ray Robinson as they were in the top 10 ranking system. You would think they would because they would have a shot at taking his place. But if they lost, they would be pushed back in the rankings. Ray Robinson was the most dynamic young man coming up at that time. Fast hands, beautiful combination, high IQ, had a trainer by the name of Harry Wiley Sr. And they were trying to push for Ray Robinson to become champion. And they looked at all weight divisions. So they tried in the lightweight division. They tried in the welterweight division. They were attempting to move up to the middleweight division. At that time, Tony Zale was the champion. And the war would break out. Title would become frozen. So Robinson was ranked as high as number 1 in the welterweight division. So he would stay there. He would face Jake LaMotta in 1943. Now, he had already defeated Jake LaMotta in 42. He defeated him. But he would lose to Jake LaMotta in 1943. 3 weeks later, he would revenge the loss, his only loss, with Jake LaMotta in 1943. The 75 fights, Ray Robinson would walk into New York's Madison Square Garden. He would only lose one fight, and that was to Jake LaMotta in 43. And he would face Youngstown, Ohio's Tommy Bell. He would finally receive his big break. And Ray Robinson weighed 146.5 pounds. Tommy Bell weighed 146 pounds. Tommy Bell would drop Ray Robinson with a sneaky right hand over Ray's lazy left jab. But Ray would get up to count to 6. He would be on one knee. You couldn't hear a pin drop in the garden. But when Ray got up, his gloves were wiped off, and one of the most beautiful boxing exhibitions ever seen in New York's Madison Square Garden would appear in front of the eyes of the spectators. And what was remarkable about that evening, you would have 15,670 spectators in that crowd. They would gross $82,948 in receipts. And Robinson would dance. He would move. He would parry, shoulder roll, F-stop, moon. He would catch and shoot. Clear his head and open up with massive combinations, triple F hooks, and keep Tommy Bell at bay. Now, Robinson was a 5-1 favorite to win that fight that evening. He would drop Bell in the 11th round. The crowd would go crazy. That was their hometown hero. He had won the Golden Gloves, began his pro debut under a main event, Henry Armstrong and Fizzy Zivik. He was Harlem's finest. You see, before Ray Robinson, you had a young man by the name of the Harlem Thunderbolt, Harry Smith. By my estimation, one of the fourth greatest middleweight champions of all times. Although colored middleweight champion, who was refused opportunities in mainstream boxing. You had Larry Estridge, Jack McVeigh. Just a handful of great middleweight names in Harlem. Ray Robinson was one of the best. Now, the referee that night was Eddie Joseph. He would have Ray Robinson 10-5 in scoring. Yeah, Jack O'Sullivan had it 8-6 for Robinson. Arthur Schwartz 10-5. So Robinson was clear to a victory. No questions about who would win that fight. 5-1 favorite. But Tommy Bell showed up that night. He had a younger brother by the name of Bobby Bell. It was 3 brothers, and 2 of them were prospects. Bell was a featherweight. Bobby Bell, and Tommy Bell was the welterweight. Tommy Bell would face Jake LaMotta and several others. But on that night of December 20th, 1946, New York Madison Square Garden, one of the most special nights that the Garden would ever produce, an up-and-coming young man by the name of Walker Smith, Smitty, Sugar Ray Robinson, would become welterweight champion of the world. Now, he would have bumpy roads en route to the middleweight championship. He would face a fighter in New Jersey by the name of Charlie Fusari. Put up a very good fight. Charlie Fusari was very underrated. But Ray Robinson would treat him like a sparring partner. Beautiful jabs. He would circle in very tight quarters. Learned that trick from George Dixon. He would learn his inside game from the great Sugar Ray Robinson. Learn the jab from Joe Gans. And his punching power and combination from the great Joe Louis. He would have quite a scare. One evening he would wake up in sweats. And he would state that he dreamed that he would kill a man in the ring with a left hook. The opponent was Jimmy Doyle. it would unfortunately happen. And from that point on, Ray Robinson didn't want to punch hard anymore. Didn't want to hurt a man. In fact, he was just in it for the money. So he decided to face Jake LaMotta, 1951. St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And he would defeat Jake LaMotta in 13 rounds. He would face Jake LaMotta a total of 6 times. LaMotta was always a middleweight. Even in 43 when he faced Robinson, Robinson was a welterweight, just coming up from the lightweight division. LaMotta was a middleweight. In fact, he was light heavyweight in the amateurs when he would win the diamond belts in 1939. Now, one quick note. Ray Robinson had a chance to face former lightweight champion Bo Jack, the junior welterweight champion Tippy Larkin. Both these men declined. They had a chance to fight for the welterweight championship belt that Marty Servo would vacate. Robinson's scheduled for Marty Servo, Yankee Stadium, September 6, 1946. Marty Servo would pull out because he stated that his nose was injured to sparring and he would retire. Servo had already faced Ray Robinson and had lost to him. And he somewhat took a beating and he didn't want to go through that again. And that was a perfect opportunity. Marty Servo was a very, very good fighter. But at that time, Ray Robinson was a threat to all fighters. Robinson was called the uncrowned welterweight champion for 5 years, and promoter Mike Jacobs wanted to promote Ray Robinson. It was a time in Harlem when they were treated to one of the greatest nights in boxing. That story was told by my grandfather, who was in the 8th row of that fight that evening. And he told me when Ray got up off of his knee in the 6th round, the entire arena stood up. You couldn't hear a pin drop. Everyone had Ray Robinson 5-1. They had money on him. But the display of ring generalship, defense, clean punching, and Ray Robinson would dominate the rest of that round with head movement, feints, double, triple jabs, quadruple left hooks, right hand leads, straight rights to the body, and Tommy Bell never landed a punch on him. My grandfather told me that was the greatest exhibition of 2 minutes of boxing that he has ever witnessed. Ray Robinson, one of the greatest fighters of all times. And I wanted to show homage to Ray Robinson right here on the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Salute to Tommy Bell. Salute to the pound for pound greatest fighter of all times, Sugar Ray Robinson. Salute to my brother Curtis Anderson. Salute to my subscribers. Salute to Stormy B, man. Peace.